One of the greatest conversations of this era regarding media is surrounding the digital format.
This has been a huge problem for, I think, I think it's becoming more of an issue. And I think, ironically, NFTs were serving as a way to innovate on this idea of digital ownership. It's just that they didn't provide any real value. But the concept of digital ownership, I think, is becoming more important every single day.
How we are becoming more and more of a completely digital world. We're starting to see physical media disappear. Brick and mortar stores are selling them less, and companies in general are creating less physical versions of their products because they prefer the convenience of digital in the way that there's no qualms about distribution. You can just put it up on a server and have people download it from there, from the comfort of their homes.
There's more control too. You've got to keep that in mind. Is that the publisher and the developer can control more of what the user experience is if they can, if the user doesn't have the game themselves, basically.
Less time and money spent on the distribution aspect, and then consumers will tend to favor digital because it is also more convenient for them. They don't have to go out of their way to go to a store and purchase a physical product. But at the same time, there are those people who do value physical media because they recognize the dangers of an all-digital world, because at the end of the day, your ability to re-download that digital media with all of the DRMs involved and all of the license protections and the like, all of that relies on companies being able to continuously host for the long term the content that they allege that you have bought and owned. Whereas when you buy physical, you do have that in the palm of your hand, and they can't take it away from you unless
I think it's the fact that they can take it away from you. I think it's a huge issue. The fact that you buy something and then you're not entitled to what you own. I think that if a company can take your money for something, they have to give you something in return.
Break in. These are the questions that we're asking, and another major question is, will legislation ever catch up? Will they recognize the dangers of an all-digital future and realize how companies are selling digital products as if they're things that you own, when in reality that's not the case? They're more like renting them, and sure, it's for the long term, but eventually the license for your digital product can expire.
Well, it's not only that you're renting them, it's that all arbitration and rights that you have over that rental is completely decided by the company. So you can say, oh, well, it's just a license, but that license removes any rights that you had. So it's basically a way for them to sidestep having to deal with tons of consumer regulations and protections.
You can just decide that you no longer own the product that you paid for. Well, it turns out that here in the U.S. and in California specifically,
this is very good.
Legislators have been paying attention to this issue that has been raised more and more, especially throughout the last couple of years and the last couple of months, especially, I feel, with various incidents that have stirred up this conversation. And so right here we have a headline that IGN published on Twitter that reads, California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a bill into law that will force storefronts to admit that you don't actually own your digitally purchased games, films, and TV shows. You're just licensing them. This is...
Thank fucking God. Now, I've said before, I don't think this goes far enough. I think that if you buy a game, I don't think that they should, I don't think they should be able to take that away from you. They should only be able to take the ability for you to access their live servers away from you, if that makes sense. So, if you play an online video game and you cheat, you can't access the online servers because you're cheating. But you still should be able to have access to that game itself.
This is not a law that's being proposed or presented. This is something that's already been signed and will come into effect in the not-so-distant future. And while this doesn't stop companies from being able to purchase digital media from your library when they feel like it in the future, it does at the very least force them to put out there a certain level of honesty that might have their sales suffer, because people will be very clearly informed that you're not actually buying a product and owning it. You're just temporarily renting it, which is a very important distinction. If you go to storefronts right now, they all say that you are able to buy something. You click on the buy button. That is something that you can no longer do if you're a company once this
Because it's
law.
not true. That's the thing. Like, and this is why it's such a W. It's because fundamentally, you're not buying it. You're only getting a license.
Comes into effect.
This will change
if
nothing.
your product is
It will
digital, and
change
there's
people's
absolutely
awareness
no
of it.
guarantee that you'll be able to allow
And I think that, like, once you change people's awareness of it, you make people more willing to look at that becoming a problem. Because now that it's defined in a way that consumers feel like is more restrictive and less free, now consumers will be more reluctant to do that, and I think that they'll expect more from the company. Yeah, there's more aware, more combative. Yeah, now people are more aware of it. Exactly.
to access that in perpetuity, and you don't allow people to download that software in a way
pricing?
that can be
I don't know.
accessed forever, regardless of whether you have an internet connection or not,
Probably not.
without servers having to check in whether you have a license, whatever. That's why GOG took a minute to comment. Well, because as you know,
here we
GOG
go.
sells all of their games
Yep.
DRM free, meaning that once you download something from GOG, that digital file doesn't have to check in with anything. That digital file is everything you need to access the contents of that game, and you can, copy and paste it, move it around however you like.
Thank God.
If GOG goes down, but you still have that file you downloaded from GOG, you get to keep it forever, and it will
This
never
is something that not even Steam does. I don't
go
use
offline.
it, but
It'll
it's
never
respectable.
become sort of a broken product that you can no longer access. GOG's downloaded games will never cease to function as a result of a company pulling a certain product from the store. More specifics about the law can be found in this Verge article, whose headline reads, California's new law forces digital stores to admit you're just licensing content,
fucking
not
God.
buying it. But before we discuss that, you know what's more important than protecting your digital library?
ads.
Protecting your personal information. Which brings us to the sponsor of
Yeah.
today's video, Delete Me, a subscription service dedicated to protecting your personal information and keeping it private. In this digital age when data
I'm actually really surprised that there's so much of an information economy, because I feel like it's crazy that you need all of these like websites and ads. I feel like this should be illegal. Maybe I'm being crazy, but the fact that all of this stuff is made public information and people are commodifying everybody's personal information, that's like, I don't see this as being good for like the public.
brokers are constantly selling your personal data to shady entities, it is more important than ever to be proactive about
sketchy.
your
Yeah, it
digital
is.
footprint. And that's where Delete Me comes in. It is a one-stop shop for deleting your personal information from search results and hundreds of data broker websites. Everything from your name, age, past and present addresses, photos, email, phone numbers, relatives, social media, occupation, marital status, property value, so on and so forth. Information that nefarious actors could try to take advantage of. As someone who is a public figure and the potential target of harassment, of scams, of doxing, identity theft, stalking, you name it, what Delete Me offers is actually pretty invaluable. What's particularly great about Delete Me is that it's constantly active. After you get set up, it will monitor sites and remove your data as needed, all while providing you with a privacy report every 7 days to keep you fully updated. You can also make your own custom requests to have your information removed from specific sources by Delete Me's experts. If digital privacy is a top priority for you like it is for me, then protect your data with Delete Me by using my link, joindeleteme.com/Yong20.
So there's actually been like a new type of scam that's happening, and it's being made with AI. And like, I know Thor talked about it a little bit, Pirate Software, and it's something that's common now, and like a couple of other guys have talked about it publicly, is that people will use AI versions of a person's voice to scam their family members into giving them money. It's actually crazy.
And use my code YONG20 to get 20% off checkout, with family plans available as well. All of this
on
can be
TV,
found in the description and comment section below. So it is further stated down here that California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a law, AB 2426, to combat disappearing purchases of digital games, movies, music, and ebooks. This law is meant to cover digital media across the board, which is even better. It'll force digital storefronts to tell customers they're just getting a license to use the digital media rather than suggesting they actually own it.
I hope that the outcome of this will be that it makes consumers more aware of the fact that the relationship that they have with the people that are purchasing things, that they're buying things from, is completely unfair. Because I think that really the reason why the companies want to do this is because it makes it to where the user doesn't have certain degrees of consumer protection, and they're not able to exercise autonomy over what they spend money on. So the first step to that is making people aware that it's happening.
Law comes
that's what's
into
happening
effect
now.
next year in 2025, which is not that far away. So we're going to start seeing a paradigm shift in the way shops, digital storefronts list their games and what words they use for the purchase button that can no longer say purchase or buy. If it has some kind of DRM on it, if there's no guarantee, you can just download it and keep it forever. It'll ban digital stores from using terms like buy or purchase unless they inform customers that they're not getting unrestricted access to whatever they're buying. Storefronts will have to tell customers they're getting a license that can be revoked. Companies that break the rule could be fined for false advertising, because that's precisely what's been happening for the masses out there who just kind of interpret the buy button as literally buying it and keeping it forever and don't really have the full scope of what that is technologically speaking, where companies can revoke that whenever they want. You know, they were given the false sense of security that this digital product will stay in their library ad infinitum. So this law coming into effect...
Well, it's not even the false promise. It should be the expectation. There's no functional reason why a consumer that spends money on a video game, like Elden Ring, for example, shouldn't be able to play that game outside of like whatever program that they're using to play the game with, like Steam or something like that, right? Like, there's no benefit to the user that happens. And I feel like, again, all of the reason for doing this is just so they can sidestep a lot of consumer rights and consumer advocacy.
Think is a great first step into protecting customers from the kind of false advertising we've seen from companies, and protecting folks from the idea that digital purchases are permanent, which is just an idea that doesn't exist, and informing customers of what the consequences of an all-digital era are. Now, the reason GOG can say well is because this new law won't apply to stores that offer permanent offline downloads, which is exactly...
That's fucking right. There you go. And so this, again, now what they've done is they've created a cultural differentiator between companies that are doing something that is in the consumer's best interest versus in the company's best interest. And it has to be defined by the company under threat of law. Thank fucking God. This is why you have government, by the way.
Downloads, which is exactly what GOG offers. Once you download an installer for a game, there are no conditions involved in being able to use it. And I'm willing to bet you a lot of what inspired legislators to hop on this and sign a bill for a law like this has to do with Sony and Ubisoft and similar companies who once upon a time did risk or did fully execute the removal of digital content from people's libraries without their consent.
I think that, I think he's right, number one. And I think also, like, we've had digital marketplaces for long enough now that the idea of a game going offline and nobody being able to play it, although you spent money on it, I feel like it's common enough for people to have a shared experience with that and understand why it's bad. I think that's the big reason. It's because now more people have had that experience. And I think also, like, with games, that's only one instance. Like, so I'll go on Spotify. There's a lot of times, like this one right here. Can I play this one anymore? The content's not available. So this is a Billy Idol song, and I can't listen to this song on Spotify. And there are songs that are grayed out. Like, you guys have this on, like, your playlist, for example. Yeah, exactly. Oh, here's another one here. Content's not available. It was at some point, now it's not. Happens all the time. Shit pisses me off. Exactly, it does. And so I think the reason why it's happening now is that more people have experienced this, so they understand why it's a problem. It's been a problem for a long time, but now like the degree of like consumer literacy is higher, so people expect it.
Without them being fully aware that companies even had that capability. I think one of the biggest movements that really drew eyes to the dangers of an all-digital future is Stop Killing Games.
Yep.
This is the website right here. You can see already just from
36%.
the number of signatures on this European Citizens Initiative petition.
That's crazy.
How much this movement has kind of come to the public limelight. 362,169 signatures, with the goal here seemingly being to garner over 1 million signatures. And the goal of this movement isn't just to have companies disclose that you don't own things that you buy digitally, and for companies to disclose that you don't own anything that you buy digitally, but to end this idea of companies even being able to pull products from your library without your consent as a result of whatever. Their games go offline, or they don't feel like selling their games anymore, their license expiring, whatever. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. There shouldn't be this idea that a product can just fully disappear from the face of the earth forever. I mean, that is just
the problem. So, and this is like really one of the big issues. And I think that like this is one of the points that I think Thor brought up in criticism of the Stop Killing Games that I think is very valid, is that you cannot require companies to maintain a game indefinitely, because then nobody would ever make a game because you're writing a blank check, right? I think he's totally right about that. But at the same time, I think that if you're not providing the service and somebody else makes a private server, I don't think you should be able to shut them down. If you're not providing the server and you're not doing it anymore, you should not have the ability to, by force of law with copyright, shut down that server. I feel like that's my only real opinion with Stop Killing Games. Everything else to me is debatable. Should work for Variety. Well, it should work as if it's abandonware. Like, that's the parallel that I would use in order to like base my argument off of it. Company's sole purpose is to gain money, but they want you to be happy giving them more money. Yeah, well, that's the thing. But that's not the user's purpose. Nobody was asking devs to hold open servers, just give their server code when they shut down. I don't even think that they should have to give their server code. I just think that they should not be able to stop people from recreating the game.
Complete detriment to preservation of gaming history, but also a detriment to customers who feel like, obviously, that when they buy something, they should have more say on how that product is able to be accessed. And
I really like the way he said that, because it really puts into perspective the fact that we as consumers have all the power. And if we decide collectively that we own video games now, and we can't, like, you can't just tell us that we're licensing them and then take them away from us randomly, we can just get together and make a law, and then the companies can't do that. Done. It's actually that easy. So it's completely possible for us to do this. Yeah, gamers rise up. Yeah, and if you get enough people together, you can do that.
You know, if a game goes offline, you should allow people to make their own private servers, still retain the digital files in their library and not have that forcibly removed. Your library should feel sacred, you know what I mean? Because it feels invasive when a company comes in and no matter what the reason, it is the digital equivalent of them breaking into your house and deciding that they need to take your video game off your shelf because they decided that it is no longer a product they want to see out there, because they wanted to see disappear from the face of the earth. Once you put it out there, that shouldn't be up to them. And for those who don't know, this whole Stop Killing Games movement started because Ubisoft deleted the crew from players' libraries without...
Maybe as an MMO player, I come at it from a different perspective, but I think that the first time that I became aware of this being problematic was obviously with Classic WoW, but more importantly and more binary was WildStar. WildStar is dead. The game is totally dead. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, maybe people are trying to make a private server for it now, but they shut down the servers entirely. And so like, and I think that happened like in, I think 2020 or something like that, maybe 2018. And so it happened kind of recently. And that's when I first was like, I think this is a problem.
Without their consent, without their permission, the
It's a fun
company's pulling
game.
licenses
Apparently
from paying
not.
customers now that the servers have shut down. This was
Yeah.
an always online game for unnecessary reasons. They could have made it so that the online requirements aren't there and players are still allowed to access the basic bones of the crew, which even as a single player game, it can kind of work. But the fact that they just decided without refunds that this game is no longer a product that you're allowed to own, and even if you paid money for it, they can go in there and just strip that from you, was incredibly invasive.
It was.
And a lot of people felt the same, to the point where this Stop Killing Games movement gained the kind of traction that it did. I mean, this kind of signature numbers is not something you see in all petitions. Clearly,
It is a crazy amount of people that have signed this so far. I actually think that's true. It's already over 350,000 people have signed this. 36%. That's nuts.
there are strong feelings about the idea of digital ownership. Companies shouldn't be able to allow to have full control over the existence of digital content. If they want to take it off store shelves, fine, but the people who bought it should still be allowed to keep that content, and they shouldn't be able to just erase history when they feel like it. And then there was that major incident with PlayStation, which, yes, is a gaming company, but this particular incident involved the potential removal of digital movies from your library. People got this message saying, "Dear PlayStation customer, as of December 31st, 2023, due to our content licensing arrangements with content providers, you'll no longer be able to watch any of your previously purchased Discovery content, and the content will be removed from your video library."
I think that if they do that, they have to give refunds. I do. I think that they have to give refunds if they do that. I mean, because you paid money for something and they're taking it away from you. And that's not the only remedy, right? You could also, instead of that, you could maybe not give refunds, but you could allow people to download the file locally. So like, okay, well, we can't provide this to you through our system anymore, but we're going to give you this file so you can, still have it yourself. You paid for use, not to own. So the entire idea of ownership and usage and licensing, all of these things are constructs that are invented by humans. You don't really own anything. If somebody can come and just take it away from you, the government, look at eminent domain. The government can just come and take it away from you. You don't own anything. The whole idea of ownership, private property, and everything, this is all a construct. So when I'm talking about redefining the way that we look at this construct, and then you say that ownership is what it is, that's fundamentally not true. Ownership is defined by people, and if it's defined by people, it can also be redefined by people. And I'm saying that we should redefine it. It's that simple. Everything's a construct? Not everything, but many things are. But yeah, that's the reason why. Agreed, I want it your way? Exactly, right? And so, and this is a big thing, is like people might not really understand this, but yeah, private property isn't real. You don't have private property. Like, no, like, if somebody can take something away from you, then you don't really own it. You don't own anything.
It wasn't until the backlash got so big and this drew so much attention as to be a potential legal liability for Sony and PlayStation that they decided to publish the following on December 21st, 2023. Due to updated licensing arrangements, the Discovery content removal plan for December 31st, 2023 is no longer occurring.
Indefensible.
We appreciate your ongoing support and feedback. So they backpedaled on this particular incident, but they didn't on a previous incident from July 8th, 2022, where the PlayStation Store removed purchased movies from libraries after service shutdown. More specific numbers can be found right here. The change affects 314 titles in Germany and 137 in Austria. And the reason Sony was able to get away with this incident was because this was done in a smaller market where this issue garnered less attention. But the latest
That's the reason. I think that's a very good point. The reason why this has been allowed is because there isn't a lot of awareness for it. That's what Karl Marx. I can't. Well, I understand that a lot of people there are a lot of people that are like of conservative and libertarian lean that place a very high moral premium on the idea of ownership. And I think that's misplaced. I think it's misplaced and it's misguided. Because if somebody can take something away from you, then I don't think that you really own it. And the government can take it away from you, and so you don't own it. Private property doesn't exist. The government tells you that it exists. And then everybody else agrees that it exists. To the extent that people decide that it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist. That's it. It's literally that simple.
This incident from December of 2023 that affected people in the U.S. and in major markets. And so now that people got wind of the dangers of an all-digital future and how companies can just do this and were made aware that such a possibility exists, this is when this topic gained a lot of traction. I think stuff like this, combined with what happened with Ubisoft killing off the crew and removing that from players' libraries and Stop Killing Games, gaining traction. Between all that, I think that's what caught legislators' eyes and had them engage in.
This will keep happening because more legislators. So, like, it's affecting more different types of media. Like I used, for example, like I bet a double-digit percentage of people that are working in Congress have Spotify. So they've probably experienced this themselves. So when that percentage gets high enough, when that percentage of people that are in Congress and working in government play video games, understand that. I doubt that. I think Spotify is insanely popular. No, of course they do. The more that it happens, the more people will like try to stop it. Well, if they want to cancel their product, they have the right to. If you want to cancel a product, you have the right to canceling it. Well, let's think about this in a logical sense. So if you have a membership to something, and then they decide to take that membership away randomly, then you probably could get your money back and you could sue that company because you got scammed effectively, right? So I think that, again, what I'm talking about is redefining what that looks like and what that is. Like what the idea of ownership is in general. And I think that that's what has to happen. Why are you comparing songs you never bought, where you actually bought a membership to listen to? Buying a game and having it removed is 100% different. You're right, and having the game removed is 10 times worse than the Spotify thing. You actually bring up a really good point, and I think Spotify is actually the weakest argument that I have, but I think it's also one that a lot of people have experienced. So like the buying the movies that you're no longer able to access, that you can't access the games, I think those are much stronger arguments than what I'm using with Spotify. But what I'm saying is that Spotify and other things like the movies have a larger audience than just video games. And once that audience, enough people are interfacing with that, because you're seeing more and more content. I'm not crazy. Everybody has seen this, right? How we're seeing more and more content turn into a subscription, more and more content turn into a license rather than ownership. So as that happens, of course, more people in society are going to be aware of it. And so once that hits a critical mass, then you can enact legislation that people can understand in order to solve the problem. And the first step to that is making people aware of the problem, and that's why the legislation in California is a very good thing.
Plans to put out legislation that is now legitimate, that has been signed. There's a bill now that is going to come into effect in 2025 that isn't the be-all, end-all solution, but is a good first step to at least putting a spotlight on the issue and putting pressure on companies. Also worth noting is that Sony was involved in this incident involving Crunchyroll and Funimation. Recall that Funimation was kind of fused into Crunchyroll, and Funimation itself was shut down. And so when asked what was going to happen to digital copies from Funimation account holders, it was stated right here that Crunchyroll does not support Funimation digital copies, which means that access to previously available digital...
What's going to happen to my digital copies? They're gone, bitch! Yeah, I can translate that real quick.
Copies will not be supported, which is something that garnered a lot of backlash and is just utter bullshit. And once again, a cautionary tale about this idea of an all-digital future and companies pushing for that and us allowing it. This stuff's happening more and more, and it's become frequent enough and concerning enough that I cannot disagree with this quote that garnered a lot of approval. If paying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. This right here on Twitter alone garnered over 144,000 likes.
I do think this take is stupid. I think it's a stupid take because, of course, stealing isn't piracy. They're two very different things. However, I think that the feeling behind it is incredibly valid.
5.3 million views, and a sentiment that many share. I mean, yeah, if this is how you want to play companies, then I guess piracy isn't stealing. If people found a way to pirate the crew and get it back up and running with their own private servers after you pulled that bullshit move, Ubisoft, where you took the game away from people's libraries without their permission, them doing all that I don't think is morally incorrect. I mean, if anything, you're encouraging for people to engage in that kind of activity. I'll close this video off by...
Like, I mean, it's clearly not... Like, there's no moral evil that's being committed if they take a game away from you that you paid money for and then you're playing it in a pirated way. Like, you've done nothing wrong ethically, in my opinion.
Once again, highlighting this video where Christopher Nolan talks about the importance of physical media and nails it on the head in regards to the dangers of an all-digital future. Here's what he had to say.
Buy a 4K UHD, you buy a Blu-ray, it's on your shelf, it's yours. No company, is going to break into your house and take it from you and repossess it. It's yours and you own it. That's never really the case with any form of digital distribution. You're relying on the continued health of the supplier, the company who's supplying it, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, even huge names like Christopher Nolan recognize the dangers of an all-digital future, and it's something that he wants to avoid at all costs because as a filmmaker and as a film buff, he knows what it's like to have that feeling of pure ownership over a medium that, for him as an artist is sacred. And he wants to ensure that everything he buys is something that is not corporately controlled, an artwork that he can continue to access, like a painting up on a wall. You know what I mean? If it's something that moves you, it shouldn't be something that a company can come in and strip away from you and remove from your wall. It should just be something that you can be secure.
It's like, imagine like you have a Picasso painting or something like that, and like you walk in, one day, and then like the painting's been replaced by a picture of a bored ape. And it's like, the company, they're trying to push this NFT thing, so they're getting rid of all the Picassos, they're replacing them with bored apes. And so we did this while you were asleep at night, and so this is... Like, it sounds pretty fucking stupid, huh? Sounds really fucking dumb. There it is.
In fully knowing that it will always be there as long as you keep it safe and you protect it and you cherish it. The fact that legislators are at least aware enough to start making some moves, that's an encouraging sign. I still feel like we need to do more. I
agree.
Stop Killing Games has the right idea of what legislators need to be encouraged to do and what they need to be encouraged to stop companies from doing. But alas, I'll take any victories right now, and hopefully this can be expanded upon further in the future. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this legislation and how you think legislators should handle this whole idea of an all-digital future and the kinds of legislations they should put into play. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
Well,
thanks to various social and...
Not yet.
One of the greatest...
I completely fucking agree with everything that he said. And I actually think that, like, people joke around and talk shit about California all the time. A lot of times I think it's justified. But this is a California W. Because I think the first step to solving a problem is making people aware of what the problem is. And I think this is what that does. It makes people aware that when they're buying something, they don't actually own it. And I think in the process of that, it's going to make people second guess that. And also, it's going to create a value differentiator for companies that give you the actual product that you have ownership of, like GOG, for example, versus something like Steam or Epic Games Store where you don't have that. So I think this is a huge fucking positive. I'm very happy about this. I feel like California has some of the best worker and citizen protection laws against corporations. California does a lot of things really well. It does some other things not so well. But this is one of the things that I think they're doing well, and I'm really glad to see that. Do you think other states will follow this? I do. And so a really good example of that is the way that it's the way that porn sites have gotten blocked. I feel like we've seen so many porn sites get blocked recently without age verification. And I think that's what's going to happen even more. So, like, that's an example. And I think also this problem is something that the more people know about it, the more people will be upset about it and want to not have it. So, or want to have it fixed. So basically, as soon as you see one state doing it, other states are going to be like, that sounds like a good idea. And it was received well here, because you look at it from a politician's perspective. You want to pass legislation that people, think are, this is like you looking out for them, right? Like, obviously, it's an easy win. Well, it not only is an easy win, it's something that has a proven record of success in other places that I think an average person would agree with. So yeah, I would say, and so yeah, positive sentiment legislation. So like, there's a big reason for that. Why wouldn't a senator want to do this? Like, not only is it, in my opinion, the ethical good decision, but also people will view it as a moral good as well. Was that the Steam TOS update they pushed last week? That's what I thought. I thought the same thing, but no. It actually was the result of a separate lawsuit being, resolved in one way or another, and that's why they did it. The average person does not care. I actually think that so the reason why an average person doesn't care is because it doesn't affect them. But the problem is that, like, everybody here, how many of you guys have DVD collections? Who here has a DVD collection? A lot of people, right? I used to, not anymore, right? Yeah, a lot of people. Every single person has had this experience, basically, of the idea of owning things. And I think that the more that people are aware that you're not owning things in this other new, licensing system, I think the more people will push back against it. That's what I think is going to happen. The digital media shouldn't be the same price as physical media. Well, I think and this is the thing, right? Is like the fact that a license and buying is considered the same thing. Think about that and what the psychology for that is in the mind of a consumer. And you see how legislation can promote consumer awareness, and it can cause the market to hopefully self-correct. And so hopefully that's what happens. Since large companies like Sony say buying is no longer owning, then piracy is no longer theft, because even if you buy it, you don't own it. Owning means it's yours to an extent, and you should keep a certain form of access should it go down or get sold off to another company. Very true. If a license is revoked, I should be paid back. Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. I completely agree. So why the hell are we paying full price for something we don't really own? As I said, the first step is awareness. Man. Yep, there you go. And I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be more and more popular the more people start seeing it and see what the problem with it is. So I'm very happy to see this, and I hope it continues.